100% fun, 0% white guilt. We're covering 28 great black video game characters, one for each day in Black History Month. We did this series a few years ago, and it was a lot of fun, so let's do it again. If you're wondering if a character is on this list, they actually might be on the ranked list from 2 years ago. Be sure to check the other one, link is in the description. To make my life a lot easier, we're not going to rank them this time, we're just going to cover the Solace, the good, and the Dread, the bad, about each of these characters. It's the best way to celebrate Black History Month. Starting with number 28, Franklin from Grand Theft Auto V. Franklin always wanted more for himself, and he refused to cling to the gangster life, using every opportunity to make a name for himself amongst the criminal underworld and pull himself to a higher station. The Solace, he's the very definition of ambitious and hardworking. He's a skilled driver, if you're good at the game anyway, a strategic thinker, and he's loyal and trustworthy, being the level-headed one between his counterparts Trevor and Michael, far less prone to emotional and over-the-top responses. A rags-to-riches story in the truest sense of Grand Theft Auto. The Dread, he's canonically got somewhere around 300 dead bodies in his wake. He's not a hero, he's a success story, and it's important to make that distinction. He's emotionally detached, not often showing his deeper feelings, and he's morally ambiguous at best, being on the complete opposite side of the spectrum from someone like Marcus from Watch Dogs 2. Still one of the more memorable and likable black video game characters of all time.
You said a man is stuck in a tree and he needs my help? Part of you would rather leave him there because he's a bit of a dick, but you're doing your civic duty. His parachute failed to open? And now you kind of wish he'd missed a tree. But morality is a human construct and you're not hardwired to think that way? I can't believe I'm getting smart talked by a fucking dog.
Number 27, Lamar Davis from Grand Theft Auto V. The Solace. Lamar is Franklin, one of the main characters' childhood friend in Grand Theft Auto V. He's known for his loud-ass personality and over-the-top ambitions. Unlike Franklin, Lamar stays committed to the low-level hustling and gang life, often getting himself into trouble. Lamar is fiercely loyal and he's always looking out for his people, even if his decisions in doing so aren't always the smartest. Lamar is probably the funniest character in this whole game, certainly in Franklin's side of the story if we're going to exclude people like Trevor.
Oh, nigga, don't hate me because I'm beautiful, nigga. Maybe you got rid of that old yee-yee ass haircut you got, you get some bitches on your dick. Oh, better yet, maybe Tanisha will call your dog ass if she ever stop fucking with that brain surgeon, the lawyer she fucking with, nigga.
Homie or not though, if anybody roasted me like this, they're catching hands. Honestly, he brings Franklin's part of the world of Grand Theft Auto V to life, and he is a friend that many of us knew or know in real life. But this is kind of where we start to get into the Dread, because Lamar never really evolves. He's always scheming and doing street level shit, and he might have big ambitions, but he never really has the strategies to become more than a hustler. He's that friend that most successful people know and leave behind in real life, because when you're trying to become a better person, he's dragging you into schemes and drama and old shit that you don't want to be a part of anymore. I know too many Lamars. Also, as far as representation goes, he's every stereotype in the book, down to the weed and the guns. But he's a fun fictional character, and he's integral to the story of one of the most popular video games of all time.
This is where all the magic happens.
Damn, this flies. Fuck, man. This probably worth more than my whole crib.
Nigga, that's worth more than your whole fucking life.
Now on to number 26, Balrog from Street Fighter. He's one of the more famous black video game characters, a powerhouse in the ring, a disaster in managing his money. Brother stays broke and fighting for cash. The thing about Balrog is that he's always really just been a brute that works for M. Bison. But Balrog's actually one of the first playable black video game characters ever created. On one hand, the man's a legend. He brought raw, Mike Tyson-esque power to Street Fighter, proving that sometimes all you need is a good right hook and zero concern for blocking. Speaking of, his Japanese name before they pulled the old switcheroo for the US versions was M. Bison, clearly alluding to Mike Tyson. But fearing a lawsuit, Capcom switched the names to play it safe. He's got style, he's got strength, he's got one brain cell dedicated to money and the other to punching. He's actually kind of a footsie character that applies pressure well, then hits with a rush down when he gets an opening for people who actually play Street Fighter. He's fun to play, high skill ceiling. But that's the Solace. The Dread? Balrog came along when video game characters weren't always fleshed out well. But he has endured, and he's honestly not really changed much. He's not much more than a giant brute Mike Tyson clone, angry, stupid, and punchy, despite having a few decades to get development. He got a little bit in adjacent media like the anime and stuff, but nothing substantial like Ryu and Akuma. Balrog was important in pushing the line to include more black video game characters, specifically original black characters, and he's extremely recognizable. That earns him his spot on this list. But I do think I'd like to see Capcom do a little bit more with him in future installments, or at least in DLC for Street Fighter 6. We're counting down 28 of the best black video game characters of all time. One for each day in Black History Month.
Let me have a turn.
Number 25. Taion from Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let's just get this out of the way now. There's a pocket of the internet who seems very disturbed when people call him black, but he's got a freaking afro, dark skin, and he's voiced by a black man. In real world terms, he's black. Y'all can let us have this one. Taion is a strategist from Agnes, and he's a key member of XC3's main party. A deeply analytical and intelligent thinker, he serves as the group's tactician, using insight and planning to navigate battles and complex situations. This kind of translates well to him being a support character, using buffs and debuffs to aid in combat, which is honestly my favorite character type in RPGs nowadays. Tacticians and subjugators are my thing. It makes me feel like I'm bigger brained than I actually am. He's a very unique weapon. He fights with a paper blade called a katashiro, but he calls them mondo. I think this is personally one of my favorite things about him, as most black characters get fists and guns. I'll take this. At first, he's an enemy of the party, as you meet him very early on in opposition to your team, and you're kind of forced into combat, but something kind of major happens and he joins the team. It takes time for him to warm up to the rest of the group, and being a tactician by nature, this actually makes sense. But he quickly becomes a favorite of the party. Well, to everybody but Uni anyway. He's only fourth best.
Both best, to be exact.
Only fourth?
The Dread for him, honestly, isn't even that bad. He's sometimes paralyzed with indecision, and that's due to his tragic backstory, and this causes him to freeze in case he makes a mistake, and his decision could cost the life of someone he cares about. Also, his distrust and smugness towards the rest of the party can get a little tiresome.
Wanna follow? Even better, let's make a big sign saying, "We're idiots, please shoot us." You what?
But like I said before, it meshes well with his character. Honestly, the only thing I truly hold against him is that he's playing fourth fiddle to Noah and the rest of the company. If he were the main character, though that's hard to exactly pinpoint in a Xenoblade game, I'd probably have him in my ranked list in the top 28 of all time. Number 24, an extremely recognizable one, Eddy Gordo from the Tekken series. Eddy Gordo burst into Tekken in Tekken 3 back in 1997 with his dazzling capoeira moves and a backstory that's straight out of an action flick. He was born to a wealthy Brazilian family, and his father, a righteous businessman, was assassinated by a corrupt cartel, leaving Eddy orphaned and angry. Eddy's father's dying request was that Eddy take the blame and go to jail as a way to hide, and he abided his father's wishes. Framed for a crime he didn't commit, he spent years in prison, where an old master taught him capoeira. By the time he got out, he was ready to take on the world. Since then, Eddy has been a Tekken mainstay, flipping and dancing his way through the tournaments, often trying to either save his mentor or seeking revenge. His fighting style, think breakdancing meets street brawling. The Solace, he's incredibly loyal, whether it's avenging his father or saving his master, he never quits. He's a graceful warrior, which is very obvious in his dance/fighting, and he's resilient. Despite his losses, he continues to try to achieve his goal. The Dread, he's a button masher's wet dream. People that play with Eddy think that they're better than they are at Tekken. The truth is, he's so spam and button masher friendly, and in combination with his cool ass moves, he's a menace when you're playing on the couch with friends. Eddy's also kind of a dick. He had a habit of just cutting people off, and even if he's gone off to try to help people, it's still a dick move. Number 23, Nessa from Pokemon Sword and Shield. Nessa is the gym leader of the Hulberry Stadium in the Galar region, specializing in water-type Pokemon. She's also a popular model, and the comment sections of most videos about her are filled with the thirstiest comments about her looks. It's wild that she's as popular as she is, because she's not a particularly difficult gym leader by any means, but we all know why she's so popular. The Solace. Despite having a relatively minor role in the game, she gets a little bit more dedicated screen time in the anime release, having her own episode filling out her backstory. She's got a great character design, and I like that they made her a model without also adding the stereotype of her being an airhead. The Dread, like I said, she's got a pretty minor role. Despite her popularity, she comes up a lot in conversation about Gen 8, and even a lot of requests on this list. If she had more importance to the overarching plot of the game, she'd be great. And also, this is just a complaint overall with most of the Pokemon games, but they really gotta stop making gym leaders stick to one type of Pokemon all the time. She's easy because you can annihilate her entire lineup with basically one electric or grass type Pokemon without even blinking. I know they started to get a little better about that, but they really gotta keep going in the right direction. Number 22. Horatio Carlin from Watch Dogs 2. Horatio had a bit of a troubled youth, but he managed to put his head down into music and arts and technology, and that's how he pulled himself out of this negative environment. He's a programmer at Noodle, which is like the game's Google, and he's a key member of the group DedSec, which is kind of your gang, but instead of gang activities, it's a group of hackers who are kind of freedom fighters. He also serves as one of the closest friends of Marcus, the protagonist of the game, and the person that we ranked as the second best black video game character of all time. A quick spoiler warning here, but in Watch Dogs 2, you have the option of going non-lethal the entire game if you want. And most people throw that shit right out the window when Horatio gets killed, and you have the chance to go avenge him. The Solace. I have never seen a video game depict code switching in a corporate environment before, especially as one of the only black people working in that environment. That alone makes him stand out for me.
Been looking, who you been talking
Trying to
to?
get coffee.
What was that?
Just trying to get a coffee. Punk would love to lay his ass out. I can't stand that motherfucker. Hey, Becky.
He's generally a good guy, kind of an outlaw in a sense, as his role in DedSec contributes to the fight against corporate corruption, and his character serves as an emotional pivot point to the game's plot rather than just being an NPC to bond with. Also, he's pretty realistic and grounded too, not being draped in too many stereotypes. The Dread, his involvement in hacking does technically make him a criminal, hurting his representation factor just a little bit. Also, he's just a supporting character, and he was never considered for the ranked list because he doesn't have the same level of gravity as Marcus or many of the others on that list. But honestly, there's not a lot bad that I can say about him. He's funny, he's memorable. I just wish that they killed someone else instead.
You haven't experienced corporate life until you're the only brother in a meeting and have to represent all of blackdom. Jesus. If I had a nickel for every time someone complimented me for being well-spoken.
Number 21. Nagoriyuki from Guilty Gear Strive. Y'all gonna put some respect on Nago's name. Nagoriyuki is a mysterious samurai hailing from Nigeria, and he's known for his vampiric nature and imposing presence. He's a knightless, which is, well, it's basically a vampire who pursues the ideals of dandyism. He's traveled across the world in his journey to tame his vampiric instincts. He was forced to take part in the Crusades as a warrior until one day he vanished under mysterious circumstances. In the events of Guilty Gear Strive, he reawakens and is made to serve in a new battle, once again against his will. The Solace. He's got some of the coolest character designs I've seen on a fighting game character in a very, very long time. This imposing frame of his only adds to the fear that he strikes in his opponents, able to dish out massive damage quickly if you let him catch you with an opening. He's actually got major plot relevance, developing a rivalry to the game's major protagonist, and he has character development on his own. It's nice that a fighting game character actually has a decent amount of lore and development. and all in a single game too. This is not the case most of the time. And he's a badass in combat, mid-range demon, and a stance-switching powerhouse, being a high-skill, high-tier character. The Dread, he has tools to make up for it, but his movement is rather limited compared to the rest of the cast. Combine this with having to manage that blood gauge, and this makes him a little bit harder to play if you're not familiar with him already. Also, Brother is literally a slave the entire game. Not in physical chains, but he's being controlled by Chaos, one of the game's primary antagonists. They just had to make him a slave. Number 20, Father James Ballard from Mafia 3. Father James is a former World War II medic who became a priest after the war. He serves as a spiritual mentor to Lincoln Clay, the protagonist of Mafia 3, offering guidance and moral counsel throughout Lincoln's quest for vengeance. His portrayal by Gordon Green is top fucking notch, bringing a level of realism to the game that makes it stand out in memory.
I don't like talking about medals I got over there. Only way a man survives something like that is through the grace of God. Doesn't seem right celebrating a little piece of tin.
I genuinely wish the gameplay of Mafia 3 was better because this game's setting and story is so creative, as a large portion of what you see of Father James is in a documentary being filmed several decades after the events of the game. The Solace. Not only is he the reason that Lincoln is even alive, his mentorship offers a very destructive character a moral compass amidst the chaos. And while he has Lincoln's back, nearly like a father figure, he also holds Lincoln accountable. The Dread? His proximity to violence kind of challenges those pacifist beliefs he likes to spout so much. He is much too involved and aware of Lincoln's activities of being a literal mass murderer for that to fly. Furthermore, he's a hypocrite on that end, seeing as in one ending, spoiler alert, he's actually the one to kill Lincoln. Are his actions justified? That's left for you to decide.
Compassion is a sign of weakness, but greed is a virtue. The poor is considered morally corrupt, while every excess of the powerful is celebrated. We sent kids off to die. For what? So someone can make a few bucks?
Number 19. Vivienne from Dragon Age Inquisition. Vivienne, known as Madame de Fer, or the Lady of Iron. She's an Orlesian mage and the official enchanter to the Imperial Court. Basically, she's a boss bitch, and over the course of the game, she becomes even more of a boss bitch. She is renowned for her political acumen and has achieved her position through cunning and strategic maneuvering. The Solace, she's got a sharp tongue. Her wit and her snarky comments to everybody around her make her quite memorable. Also, I'm a big fan of her design. It's like Maleficent meets the Wicked Witch. In her endings of the game, she breaks barriers, taking levels of power that mages had previously not held. Speaking of, if set up correctly, she can be made into an unstoppable killing machine. The Dread, I'm gonna try not to get too deep into the weeds of the lore of this game, but basically mages in this world aren't exactly free. And this woman is a bit of an Uncle Tom. I guess you'd call her an Aunt Viv. Don't get me wrong, I like the fact that she goes against the grain, as she strongly opposes the freedom of her fellow mages, thinking that they need order and control, but it's kind of backwards considering she is one. Most of the Dragon Age fandom feels this way about her, that her political views are absolute dog shit while loving her attitude. She's also very conniving, as her ultimate goal and concern is her own ambitions, and it's very thinly veiled. Despite Aunt Viv wanting to keep ninjas in chains, she's actually one of the most memorable parts of the game. I always say that a good character is a flawed one. Number 18, Jacob Taylor from the Mass Effect series. Look, I'm not even gonna lie, part of what makes him so memorable and what gets him on this list is that he's just so bad, but we'll get to that. Jacob is a space marine with warlock-like biotic abilities that make him pretty dope. He makes his own path in the world and he isn't intimidated by or submissive to authority. Spoiler alert, he even kills his dad, or leaves him for dead, depending on the player's influence and his loyalty mission. He's intelligent and he's a badass. The Solace. Like I said, he makes his own decisions, and he usually makes the right call in dicey situations, most of the time. He's an upstanding guy, and he doesn't lean too heavily into any of those normal stereotypes, except maybe some daddy issues. And though it falls off later, he actually has relatively strong plot relevance in the early phases of Mass Effect 2. The Dread, this guy cheats on you. If you romance him, he will cheat on you. And this is while you're being held captive. And it's only 6 months, so you couldn't have meant that much to him to begin with. I think it's the audacity of his shittiness that makes him stand out amongst such a big cast. Look, I really wanted to like this guy, but he's a monster, like straight villainous. He's also regarded by the community as kind of boring and straight-laced compared to the rest of the cast. Lastly, he doesn't really develop or change much. He's mostly stable throughout the games. I'm a sucker for character development. I believe that your adversity shapes you, and this guy's an amoeba. Number 17. Billie Lurk from the Dishonored series. Billie has lived many lives: street urchin, assassin, smuggler, and ultimately, God killer. But no matter her role, the one thing she has always been is a survivor. In Dishonored 1, she's the right hand of Dowd, which is one of the game's main antagonists, and she helps plan and execute an assassination that sets the entire series plot in motion. Her actions unknowingly aid a coup that plunged the entire country into chaos. The Solace, she's extremely important to both the plot and some of the major characters. She also has like a bionic arm and this cool sword, and she can listen to rats. They tell her secrets. She's also playable as the main character. And in another one, she's a deuteragonist, in which she has a mechanic that determines whether or not she will kill you at the end of the game. Well, try to anyway. She's a skilled assassin. And did I mention that she's a god killer? Because she's a fucking god killer. The Dread? I honestly can't think of anything bad to say. Maybe that I liked her voice actor more in the first game rather than the second. No shade to Rosario Dawson or anything, but Christy Wu killed it. If I could go back in time, I would have added her to the list of ranked black characters, which is pinned to our profile, by the way. Make sure you watch that list. Anyway, she's really good. We're counting down 28 of the best black video game characters of all time, one for each day in Black History Month. It's the best way to celebrate Black History Month. 100% fun, 0% white guilt. Like and follow to get a new character each day as they come out. Number 16. Aveline from Assassin's Creed. Born to a French father and an enslaved African mother in 18th century Louisiana, Aveline was raised with privilege, but never forgot the injustices that surrounded her. She's trained in the Brotherhood. She became the first black female assassin in the series, using her ability to move between New Orleans' social classes to dismantle the Templar hold on the city. Her defining struggle is identity. The Assassin's Creed series thrives on duality, but Aveline embodies it more than most, navigating the world as a noblewoman, an assassin, and even disguising herself as a slave to infiltrate enemy ranks. The Solace, the number one thing about her is that she goes around killing slave owners and setting people free. That's always going to be a win in my book. Her character is a perfect embodiment of what the series is in her duality. No matter what she does, she'll always be caught between two worlds, never truly belonging in either. She's a well-crafted character. Plus, she's the protagonist of 2 Assassin's Creed DLCs. The Dread, Assassin's Creed Liberation is not great. It would be a better experience for her to be more prominently in the center of a full game rather than DLC expansions. She's trapped in the mediocre DLC packs of 2 pretty great games. Big sad. Number 15. Grace Walker from Wolfenstein. A former Black Panther turned resistance leader, Grace Walker doesn't just fight Nazis, she dismantles them with ruthless efficiency. In Wolfenstein 2: New Colossus, she commands the American resistance, bringing strategy and firepower to the fight against the Third Reich's control over the US. Grace is also fueled by grief. The Nazis took her husband and child, leaving her with nothing but rage and a mission. She doesn't tolerate incompetence, she doesn't take bullshit, and she doesn't flinch in the face of horror. She will put anyone in their place, making her an unforgettable force in the series. The dream of a free America lives in Grace Walker. That's all the Solace, really. The Dread is I wish she were playable or something. As she's written, she's basically just a mouthy NPC that gets under the skin of fragile little boys, and that makes her tough to like. She's an acquired taste, I guess.
Well, at least my face isn't a dead ringer for a massive prolapsed rectum. I want to blow a gut just looking at your bleary-eyed jive ass. Know what I'm saying?
Number 14. Nadine Ross from the Uncharted series. She's a mercenary leader, a tactical genius, and unlike most Uncharted villains, she actually wins her fights. Introduced in Uncharted 4, she runs a private military company and holds her own against both Nathan and Sam Drake in brutal hand-to-hand combat. She's not a mindless brute or over-the-top badass. Nadine is pragmatic, disciplined, and focused on business over personal vendettas. By the DLC at the end of 4, she evolves from an antagonist to a reluctant ally, partnering with Chloe. Playing the two of them, their dynamic reveals more depth, and Nadine isn't just a soldier for hire, she's trying to rebuild her life after losing so much over the course of the game. The Solace, she gets a full arc in between her introductory game and the DLC, which is nice. The Dread, I mean, she's not much to the overarching plot of the series coming in so late. There's also just not a lot that's explored with her since she's not in the player's hands until the DLC. I'd like to see her more in the forefront. Number 13. James Heller from Prototype 2. James Heller is a soldier turned violent monster with demigod-like powers. He's consumed by vengeance after losing his wife and daughter to the viral outbreak in New York Zero. He finds out that the protagonist of the first game, Alex Mercer, is to blame. Unlike James, Alex embraced his power, seeking new heights of strength. But James' rage fuels his every move. He doesn't seek to get stronger, he seeks revenge. In his game, he becomes infected with a virus that mutates him into a superhuman force of destruction, and his war against Alex is brutal. But in the end, Heller takes his enemy's power, becoming the new apex predator. He saves his daughter, and he walks away, something that Alex could never do. The Solace. James is the protagonist of his very own original AAA action game. He's brutal, vulgar, and powerful. Also, his story actually has some plot twists. The Dread, besides being a hyper-violent monster who's only slightly better than the man he's killed, he's not developed well. His only defining personality trait is anger, and there's a huge opportunity to show him dealing with grief in better ways. And we never get a chance to see it. The ending actually has him consuming or absorbing the main bad guy. So who's to say he's going to be any different? We never find out. James' story ends with him finding his daughter, but we never get any epilogue to his story for closure. It's not even addressed, and that kind of sucks. Number 12. Roland from the Borderlands series. A soldier turned vault hunter, Roland was once part of the Crimson Lance, an elite force of the Atlas Corporation, which is a weapons manufacturer in his world. But he saw through their corruption and turned against them, leading a resistance. In Borderlands, he's a no-nonsense leader, and he's the kind of guy who puts duty over personal gain. By Borderlands 2, Roland has become the heart of the resistance group, the Crimson Raiders, fighting against the villain, Handsome Jack's tyranny. But his leadership is cut short when Jack executes him in cold blood. His death is actually one of the most shocking in the series, a reminder that even heroes aren't safe in Pandora's brutal world. The Solace, Roland is a central character to one of the best looter-shooter games ever made, and he was depicted in a Hollywood movie adaptation by Kevin Hart. The Dread, that movie kinda sucked ass, and he also gets murked in a rather unceremonious way, and your character just stands there and watches it happen with your hands in your pockets. Good job. Great writing. Number 11, Ryan from The Quarry. Ryan is the quiet, brooding camp counselor of the Quarry. The Solace. He's played by Justin Smith, who brings a layered, grounded performance to the role. By far my favorite character in this game, by the way. I want this guy in more movies related to video games. He was great in Detective Pikachu as well, but I'm not going to go off on a tangent about Justin Smith. Unlike his more outgoing friends, Ryan is more cautious and analytical, and drawn to the mysteries surrounding Hackett's Quarry. His story revolves around trust and survival. While others panic, Ryan stays rather level-headed, making choices that can either save or doom his friends. The Dread, it was kind of silly that they made him a big fan of cryptid podcasts, but also he was a skeptic about everything that he's seeing with literally his own eyes. That doesn't make any sense. We're down to the last 10. Today's is Irish from the Battlefield series. Irish is a squad leader in Battlefield 4, known for his strong moral compass and no-nonsense attitude. He is actually initially distrustful of you, but Irish eventually proves to be the heart of the team, prioritizing civilians over orders, and of course you earn his trust. He later becomes a major figure in Battlefield 2042, leading the resistance against warring factions in a world destabilized by climate disasters. He's also playable in 2042 as a support specialist. The Solace. Irish is portrayed by the late Michael K. Williams, adding a level of depth and authenticity to the character. Let me tell you something, this guy was an Oscar or Emmy level actor. It is a crying shame that he is no longer with us. If you've never seen Boardwalk Empire, by the way, what are you even doing? Go watch it. Stop the video and go watch it. I'm kidding. Please watch this. The character avoids so many stereotypes by being layered and principled rather than just being a tough soldier. However, in The Dread, his role in Battlefield 2042 felt underwhelming, with many fans feeling that the game really didn't explore his story enough. He's a great example of a strong black representation, but Battlefield's focus on multiplayer instead of story, particularly in 2042, meant his character never got the depth that he deserved. It's cool that they bring him back for another game, but it was only really to kind of underserve him. Today's is number 9, Doomfist from Overwatch. His real name is Akande Ugandimu, and I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but apparently, at least according to the wiki, that can be roughly translated as heir to the god who grasps iron and war. I can't verify this anywhere, but whatever. He's written to be a brilliant strategist and martial artist who believes that conflict is the key to human progress. He serves as the leader of Talon, a global terrorist organization, and he's one of the most powerful villains in Overwatch. His cybernetic gauntlet allows him to destroy enemies with raw force, making him one of the most feared fighters in the series. I remember when he was first released and he was a bit of a menace. The Solace. Doomfist is a rare example of a Nigerian character in a major game, with a design that embraces African heritage, which is pretty cool. However, in The Dread, his role as a villain serves into that strong black antagonist trope where power and intelligence are framed as a threat. Not great. Also, in many games like this, the lore is added in afterthought, but we never really get to see this lore develop, and it's usually just given to us in exposition dumps or a short promotional video or text on a website. Despite this, his strong presence actually make him one of the most well-liked and memorable villains in Overwatch, and his design is influential rather than stereotypical. Today's is number 8, Bangalore from Apex Legends. She's a military-trained soldier in Apex Legends known for her tactical skills, discipline, and no-nonsense attitude. Back when I actually played Apex Legends, I was a Bangalore main because, well, honestly, she's kinda simple, and it felt good for bad players like myself. Mostly that little smoke gun evasion thing, so I would use that when people were shooting at me and I could just run off really quickly. Her story is that she was separated from her family during a battle, and now she's fighting in the Apex games as a way to find her way back to her family. And unlike many legends who thrive on chaos, Bangalore is focused, efficient, and loyal to those that she trusts. The Solace. Bangalore is one of the few black women in first-person shooter games, and her portrayal is strong and independent. However, in her Dread, some criticize her for being a bit too generic. She fits that tough soldier archetype perfectly. And I did mention that she's kind of basic. Well, it's kind of part of the problem with her. Her backstory, while solid, she sometimes feels kind of overshadowed by more personality-driven characters in the roster. Her personality is about as interesting as watching paint dry. Still, she is a central character to a once hugely popular first-person shooter game, and that's pretty dope. Number 7, Lenora from the Pokemon series. Lenora is the normal gym leader of Pokemon Black and White. She's a museum director, and she's an expert in uncovering Pokemon fossils, balancing her roles as a scholar and a gym leader. She challenges the player with her strategic team using her knowledge over just brute force. She also appears in the Pokemon anime, showcasing her as a wise and experienced leader, which is pretty dope. The Solace. Lenora was one of the first black gym leaders in Pokemon, which was a huge step forward for representation. The dread is that her initial design sparked controversy, as she originally wore an apron that kind of resembled imagery tied to some harmful stereotypes. Think Aunt Jemima. Game Freak later removed the apron in the international version, so they were aware of the problem and took care of it. Despite this, Lenora remains one of the most respected gym leaders in the game. Honestly, if I were in the world of Pokemon as a gym leader, I would probably be a normal type leader, but my favorite Pokemon type is Psychic, and they kind of destroyed my Pokemon. Today's is number 6, Joseph Bowman from Call of Duty Black Ops. Bowman is a US Special Forces soldier fighting alongside the player in Call of Duty Black Ops, which I just gotta say it's one of the best in the series. You would never know it looking at my content, but Call of Duty is probably the franchise I've spent the most time playing in my life, even to this day. Anyway, Bowman is voiced by Ice Cube, and he's one of the few black characters in the Call of Duty series with a distinct personality. And I give that credit to Cube. He's tough, loyal, and he's quick-witted, even delivering sharp remarks when he's faced with intense situations. Unfortunately, his fate is brutal as he's captured and by the Viet Cong during a scene where he refuses to beg for his life. You know, it's the deer hunter scene. Look, if you know, you know. I can't show it, but it's one of the most iconic moments in all of Call of Duty. The Solace. Bowman's inclusion in Black Ops is significant, as he is a strong black character in a major military game, and Ice Cube's voice acting gives him a lot of personality, making him memorable despite his limited screen time. However, the dread, that limited screen time hurts him a little bit, and while he is a great representation of resilience, his lack of development outside of his death makes him feel like a missed opportunity for a deeper character, especially when you're footing the bill for a famous actor's portrayal of him. Like, what are you doing? You could have really done something with that, with just a few more lines and a few more scenes. Black Ops 2 is better anyway. Today's is number 5, DeeJay from the Street Fighter series. DeeJay is a Jamaican kickboxer and a musician. He was introduced in Super Street Fighter 2, which is like a re-release of Street Fighter 2, but with like 4 more characters. He's known for his carefree attitude, flashy kicks, and love of rhythm. Unlike many fighters in the series, DeeJay is always smiling and enjoying the fight, making him a unique personality in the roster. The Solace. DeeJay has always stood out for his vibrant, fun-loving personality. DeeJay's been in like 4 or 5 different games at this point, and he was depicted in the live action adaptation. And since this is a fighting game, I gotta talk about it a little bit. DeeJay is fun as hell to play, and he's a mid-range tricky fighter and a mix-up specialist. So he's designed to be unpredictable, and he will mix your shit up when you fight him. I didn't really mess with him in Super Street Fighter 2, but I did in 6, and to say it bluntly, if I were actually good at the game, I would play him because of his mix-up capabilities. Now for the dread. Obviously, his character leans really heavily into Jamaican stereotype. His exaggerated accent, the constant dancing, his obsession with music, and this kind of makes him feel a little bit more like a caricature than a deep character. And while Street Fighter 6 has redefined his design, making him feel more like a respected martial artist than a joke, his earlier depictions felt more like they were playing into outdated tropes. And while he is a fan favorite, his portrayal has been hit or miss in terms of representation. Number 4, Rochelle from Left 4 Dead 2. Rochelle is one of the 4 survivors in Left 4 Dead 2. She's a news producer who gets caught in a zombie outbreak. Despite having no prior combat experience, she quickly adapts and she proves herself to be a level-headed and resourceful leader. She often serves as like the glue of the group, keeping everybody kind of focused on survival since the rest of the cast are kind of knuckleheaded and sometimes they don't really play nice together. So the Solace. She's got a realistic view of the world, she doesn't sugarcoat, and she's got a great, although dry, sense of humor. And she's also got a pretty cool design, rocking a Depeche Mode shirt and neatly tied up twists. She's also probably the most realistic of this ridiculous motley crew. The dread. While Rochelle is a black woman in a leading role for a very popular at the time and fun game, Left 4 Dead 2 didn't really give her nearly as much character flavor as the others in the cast, making her feel boring in comparison to her male counterparts. I mean, if we're being honest, aside from Coach, who really remembers any of them? But that's kind of what I mean. Even if you do think of the other characters, the last one that you'll remember is Rochelle by comparison. Plus, it turns out the dev team actually cut out a lot of her lines in the game, and these lines added to her character and showed off her dry humor, and that includes teasing the rest of the group. Despite this, her inclusion in the cast was important, and that's even considering it getting cut down. I do wonder why they took all that stuff out though. Today's is number 3, Marlene from The Last of Us. Marlene is the leader of the Fireflies, which is a rebel group fighting against military control in The Last of Us. I'm going to be careful on how I phrase this, but she's responsible for finding Ellie and discovering why she's unique, setting the stage for the game's final moral dilemma. I'm not going to say more than that since I don't want to spoil this game for others like somebody did for me. She deeply cares about Ellie, but due to her morals conflicting with Joel's, she's written out of the story in a rather memorable fashion. This is the best I can do without giving away the house. The Solace. Marlene is one of the few black women in a major narrative-driven AAA game, and her role is absolutely pivotal to the plot, so that's great. She was also portrayed masterfully in both the game and live-action portrayal. And despite her limited role, she was very impactful. The dread, however, is she's forced to make hard choices, but she never gets personal depth outside of one pivotal moment. One or two. And while her role is crucial, she doesn't get as much emotional focus as Joel or Ellie or even some of the side characters. And I feel like this is a lost opportunity for her biggest moment to have even more of an emotional impact. Her inclusion is meaningful, but her story is one of duty rather than personal growth, making her important, but kind of one note. Today's is number 2, Demo Man from Team Fortress 2. His real name is Tavish DeGroot. He's a one-eyed, explosive-wielding mercenary in TF2, and he's a Scottish black man, which is pretty cool, and he's got a love for alcohol, destruction, and it makes him one of the game's most chaotic, yet endearing characters. People have actually asked us to cover him for actual years now, as the TF2 fandom is a bit niche, but oh my god, are they passionate about their game. Back when I played, I always used Scout and Heavy, and that was with 0 deviation. Demo Man wasn't my speed, but if you were good with him, he was a fucking menace. The Solace. Demo Man is one of the most popular characters in Valve's games. He's got some cool tech, like the sticky jump, he's got good amounts of health, and decent mobility. And he's also fun. The drunkenness, yes, canonically he's an alcoholic, the explosives, and the exaggerated accents, all fun. His screen time and personality make him iconic rather than just being a background figure. The Team Fortress 2 comics actually explore him in more depth too, exploring his strained relationship with his Scottish mother, who wanted him to be a knight instead of a mercenary. The dread is the heavy use of stereotypes, and the lack of in-game depth. Most first-person shooter games have that issue, especially games like this, but he is still one of the most recognizable and beloved characters from this game. And last but not least, number 1, Wyll from Baldur's Gate 3. Wyll is a charismatic warlock known as the Blade of Frontiers in BG3. He's made a pact essentially with a devil. Not the devil, but a devil, believing that he was doing the right thing to fight evil. However, he later regrets this deal, struggling with the cost of his actions. He's a noble yet flawed character, and I love flawed characters. He's constantly trying to balance his heroism over the dark price of his pact. The Solace. Wyll is one of the best handled black characters in fantasy RPGs in recent memories. He doesn't hold a gun, he's not overly angry and punchy. I love it. He's got a compelling personal struggle rather than just being a generic warrior type. His story explores themes of sacrifice and regret and redemption, making him one of the more layered characters in Baldur's Gate 3. Unlike many black characters in fantasy, he isn't just a sidekick. He has his own goals, struggles, and his own personality too. No tokenism. However, the dread, some fans felt that his character arc could have been a little bit deeper, especially in the later acts of the game. Despite this, he remains one of the best examples of black representation in fantasy RPGs, and I'm appreciative of his inclusion. And that is the list. I want to thank everybody for their support of this series, both this and the ranked series. It's a lot of work, but the conversations are always fun. I do have to say, I don't think that we'll be able to do this next year. There's just not a whole lot of black characters left worth highlighting without doing super deep digging. And with studios being afraid of even being considered DEI, we're unfortunately going to see less and less black characters. It's fucked up that we've started to go backwards in terms of representation, but I won't stop celebrating what we do get. I really do mean it. I think that this is the best way to celebrate Black History Month. It's fun, and I'm a nerd who just likes talking about video game characters and their stories. I'm going to talk about that more in a future video anyway. Thanks for watching, everybody, and welcome to the Turtle Kingdom community. There will be more series on groups like this in the near future.